Good morning. Welcome to Life Point Crossing. So glad you're here. I'm Ross. Yes, that's Bert, and we all have names here this morning. I know most of them. We have done very well in this series so far. You're coming back. That's really, really good news because we've had some pretty difficult things. I think, through really the most difficult. I really think we are, but we are still going to be making progress. So here we go. On that note, this might be the worst possible analogy for a relationship this morning, but I've known any number of people who have served in the military. I know some of you have served in the military, yes, and there are certain elements of that for sure I will never ask anybody about. They are about as far away from my life as I could possibly imagine. I've actually read a couple books from soldiers and their experiences, and it is fascinating because it is just as wildly different from my life as anything could possibly be. But I understand very, very well why somebody might not like to talk about some of those aspects, and so I will never ask anybody. However, when we were in New England, there was a family that started coming and became really a part of the church, and they were, in fact, both military, but he specifically, the father, husband, his name was Jake, and they were there because he had been wounded in battle, and so now he was there as a recruiter for the Army. And I didn't ask him anything about, battle or anything to that effect either, but with Jake, you didn't have to. It was the only thing he wanted to talk about. At one point, I remember saying, I'm so glad that there are people like you because I understand that it's necessary in this very difficult, broken, fallen world, but I am not cut out for that sort of thing. And he looked at me and he gave me what do you mean? And I said, well, like being shot at, that's not how I would like for my Tuesdays to go. And again, he looked at me and he says, that's fine, you can shoot back. I said, that's not any better for me. I don't want either of those. Honestly, shooting back might be even worse for me. But that was my friend Jake. And I remember at least on one occasion, him talking and on some level probably even complaining about what he called, or what were called, the rules of engagement. And probably many of you have heard of these, TV or movies or whatever it is. But I think these are a set of rules that are put forth by the U.S. government, probably from Geneva Convention or some other thing that I don't understand, effectively to try and not have the wrong people be hurt, such as innocent civilians who might just happen to look suspicious or be in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? The basic idea is to try not to kill the people who are not trying to kill you, which sounds like a great idea and makes a lot of sense. You would understand why you wouldn't want those things to happen. You do also understand a little bit how some of the people with their lives on the line found them a little bit difficult, as I remember him talking about, if I remember this right, and I think I do, him saying that they wouldn't be able to open fire on somebody who they knew to be Taliban and was carrying a weapon unless they fired first or brandished it in a threatening manner. And so you can really see, from standing here in the middle of Missouri, you can see how maybe both of those are necessary or helpful or real. You can't have military shooting civilians, but also that could be a difficult thing. So you understand. But there was a very known, strict, written set of rules of engagement so that the wrong people wouldn't get hurt. Now, in a perfect world, this message would not be necessary. Maybe that's the case with every message, but this is not the perfect world. So here's what happens sometimes when two people are living together and sharing a home and a life and a budget and trying to raise kids and get the laundry done and get the dog out, is sometimes, I don't know if this has been you, but there can be disagreements. That's something that can happen from time to time. And from time to time, in fact, those disagreements can even escalate into arguments. And from there, the arguments sometimes have a tendency to escalate into full-blown fights. And when you're in a fight, you might think of those as like there's a winner or a loser, like in boxing or UFC. And so you want to do anything and everything you can to be the winner. But when this is a marriage specifically, or really any relationship, really anybody who you know or interact with, oh goodness, as soon as you're fighting, you've already both lost. Because you really are, if you're hurting your spouse, you're really hurting yourself. We looked at these verses from Ephesians last week. It said, in the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as they love their own bodies. For a man who loves his wife actually shows love for himself. No one hates his own body, but feeds it and cares for it, just as Christ cares for the church. And we're members of his body, as the scriptures say, and quote from Genesis, this explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife. The two are united into one. They are no longer two. The distinction is gone. You are them and they are you. And so what this means is that when you're hurting your spouse, you're hurting yourself and the relationship that you're a part of. So that means if you lose, you lose. It means if you win, you still lose. Sounds terrible. What possible solution could there be? Well, what if, on the occasion where there's a disagreement, and maybe even that disagreement begins to escalate into an argument, what if before that argument escalated into fight, there were some mutually understood and agreed upon rules of engagement so that the wrong person doesn't get hurt? The wrong person being either you or your spouse, who again really are the same. That would be better, wouldn't it? Oh, we would benefit so much from something like that. And honestly, this is solid gold. If I'm doing premarital counseling, I print these out and give them to the couple, and I say, look, do whatever you need to. Put this on your refrigerator. Take a picture, make it your lock screen. Whatever you have to do. And this will save you guys untold pain and difficulty, as well as opens the doors to all sorts of constructive, beneficial discussions that can happen once you're no longer afraid to have a discussion because you know you're not going to be fired upon by your spouse. This can be absolutely transformative to your relationship. So without further ado, let's get going. Here's number one: no personal attacks. The problem is always the problem. The person is never the problem, and so we don't attack the person. You deal with resolving the issue. You are teammates, not adversaries. You shouldn't need a Bible verse for any of these, but this can probably work for basically all of them. And again, think about, like, if this is the other person, right, and they did these, let everything you say be good, like that, and helpful. Everybody likes helpful, so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. Whatever you have to say is about a behavior or a situation, or maybe even a situation that is caused by the behavior, but the person is never the problem, and so we don't attack the person. We'll start off with an example where the guy's unhappy because they're probably less common and less talked about, but we'll say that the guy is sometimes unhappy because his wife has a tendency to always end up leaving late. And so they're late for so many things. They're late for church. They're late for the movies. They're late for social stuff. Their kids' school things, or whatever it is. And so now here it is, and it's happening again, and it's not every time, but it really feels like every time. And so he's like, honey, you are making us late. In this statement, what's the problem? What's making them late? You. You are the problem. Well, now that the person is being attacked, what's very, very likely to happen is they're going to get defensive and they're going to attack back. And now just that quickly, you're in a fight. This is completely unhelpful and doesn't need to happen. You're making things worse instead of better. So if it can be, and I know some of you think this is splitting hairs. I absolutely understand that. But listen, here's the nature of these things, is if you think that the way these things are worded and said don't matter, the more likely it is that it probably matters a lot to your spouse. That's how these things work, isn't it? And for what it's worth, if you're talking to me, I absolutely hear these things, and they will make a difference for me. So if you just change, you are making us late, to, right, the problem was you. Now, well, look, honey, I don't want to be late. Look, we need to leave right away, right now, or we're going to be late. And the problem has just been depersonalized so that the issue can be dealt with rather than the person, because the person is never the problem. Attack the problem, not the person. My mom always used to tell my sister and me that it took two to fight, and of course that's true. It also takes two to communicate. It also takes two to cooperate. It takes two just by nature to have a relationship. And what tends to happen, obviously not for every couple and obviously not all the time, but what tends to happen when there's something of an argument that starts to ramp up isn't this common? The man tends to withdraw. And women, this is infuriating. But men, we kind of get it. Right? Because here's why this happens. Maybe the man doesn't exactly have the physics of this all figured out, but he just knows that he always loses. Every time. He's even certain that some of the time he's right. He knows some of the times he's not right, but he knows some of the time he was right and he still lost. How did that work? And so what are you going to do when you know you're going to lose? Well, of course, it's natural to retreat. I know it's stereotypical. It's not true for everybody, but in general, women are better with words. Women are better at arguing. Men tend to be drawn to math and sciences. Women tend to be drawn to languages. And so what this means is that when he's right, he loses because, when he's wrong, he loses because he's wrong. When he's right, he loses because he's just not as good at arguing. I know this is stereotypical, but there's a reason it's all over stand-up comedy, and it's not because it's made up. Have you heard that women use more words a day than men? If you put that into Google, the AI overview will tell you that that is an absolute myth. It has been completely debunked. Men and women use the exact same number of words a day. And then you hit the see more, and it opens up more information. And it says, well, except this thin slice of life between ages like 25 and 64, where women use 3,000 words a day more than men. That is legitimately what the AI overview told me when I put that in, right? Women are just typically better at arguing, and you all know that, this is why you pay big money for an attorney. You all know it's better to be guilty with a good attorney than it is to be innocent with a bad one, because that's really very often what makes the difference in who wins or loses, not who's right, just who's better at arguing. And so you hear guys all the time, right? Man, it doesn't even matter what I say, it's gonna be wrong. And that's the face of discouragement and frustration and helplessness. That's not going to give you the relationship that you want. And so here's the solution. Don't fire. Whoever you are, man, woman, either way, don't fire. The problem is the problem. Attack the problem. It may be a behavior, it may be a situation, but it's not the person. This is why he withdraws. Do you want him to stand and fight alongside and for you and your relationship? You guys, I bet he will. In fact, I bet he will move heaven and earth, fighting alongside and with you and for your relationship. But it has to be a situation where he has a chance going in. Make it safe to talk about whatever it is that needs to be talked about. And the way to do that is to make any and all personal attacks completely off limits. You're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And now you have a chance to have some really beneficial conversations. Right? Number 2, no always or never or really any similar sort of exaggeration, right? You always do this. You always start getting ready 5 minutes before we're supposed to leave, and then we're late. Well, you always, you never are here for me emotionally. I need somebody to talk to, and you're always putting me off until after the game, and there's always a game. Every time I'm interested, you have a headache. I'm the only one helping with the kids. I do the dishes, I make dinner, I help with the homework, I change the diaper. I'm the only one who does anything. It's really easy to hear yourself say things like that, isn't it? If you don't guard your words very closely, those are very likely to be the words that are going to come out, but they don't tend to lead to constructive solutions, do they? Because now what happens is it's almost surely not factually correct. And so now that's what the spouse is going to respond to. Is like, oh, always, huh? I always have a headache. I guess you forgot about those times in Paris and after the Joneses party and last Friday night and our 3 kids just magically materialized. Oh, I'm never here listening at that time where I stayed up with you for 6 hours when your friend said that. Like, I guess that didn't happen. Look, you're frustrated. You understand, okay? And there's a pattern that's been repeated, and it isn't literally every time, but now it's happening again, and it feels like all the time, every time. And so those are the words you're going to come out, but that's what they're going to respond to, and that won't be accurate. And so now what you're doing is you're fighting about how you said always or never or exaggerated, and not even talking about the issue. You have just generated a whole brand new area for friction and disagreement. Again, we are making things worse, not better. I know that, again, some of you think that this is splitting hairs, but it's the same thing. If you think it doesn't matter, I'll bet the person who you're with thinks it matters a lot. Pay attention to your words. Choose them accurately, or you're going to end up fighting about something that isn't even a problem. Okay, 3, stay on topic. You went through the drive-thru again. You know we don't have any money to spare, and I'm sitting here eating cereal, and you just wasted $15. Oh, okay, well, don't you tell me about wasting money. You bought 3 pairs of shoes last week, right? And now we're arguing about who's worse. That's not going to make things better. That's going to make things worse, okay? And what do you do when you feel attacked? Which, again, number 1, makes all of the rest of these so much easier to do. But if you feel like you're being attacked or you're vulnerable, then you're going to kind of look around for anything you can do to put that back on the other person and fight back, right? So maybe it's something even completely different. Like, okay, well, yeah, I did go through the drive-thru. Maybe I thought it would be nice after a hard day of work to eat in peace rather than have to come home to deal with you. Oh, goodness. Now there's a whole nother situation. If there is a situation, talk about the issue or the situation or the topic. If there's another issue to talk about that, but do it separately. That's another talk. Otherwise, what happens is someone ends up bringing up something from 8 years ago, and now you're fighting about what you're fighting about. Okay? And you're looking anywhere you can for ammunition. Well, that's what you do in a fight, isn't it? Don't fight. You're not adversaries, you're teammates, you're working together. If there's a topic to address, address it. If there's another topic to address it separately, one thing at a time, solving and addressing the problem, and things can go a lot better. Number 4 is no mind reading. I know we talk about this from time to time, but you don't have the ability to see into the unspoken thoughts and motives of any other person. Especially, and really it's only a problem when, but especially when you are sure that the reason they did or said something is bad or wrong or in any way objectionable. You just don't want me to go on the fishing trip because you know that I'm going to have more fun with my friends than with you, and you can't handle that. Well, the only reason you even want to go on the fishing trip is because Joe's going to be there, and you think Joe's cool, and so then you think that makes you cool because you're still insecure from high school. I hope those are ridiculous examples. They're supposed to be. I'm not trying to press any hot button topics here today. We've done enough of that in the last couple weeks. Want to just deal with the information. But especially when it's something that's negative or wrong, It is completely unfair, and you are mistaken far more often than you would believe. I don't know how many times there's been something that Laura said or done, and I've just said, why did you do that? Why did you say that? And almost all, like, the response is, like, whether or not it was something that I like, it's generally a very, very good motive. Well, I thought you would like to, I guess I didn't think about that. But yes, that is what you would have done, and why. That is why you would have done that. You guys, if you're going to assume anything, assume the best. This is your spouse. Like, give them the benefit of the doubt, and things are going to go so much better. It's a little bit similarly, although a little bit different. Also, we don't tell anybody what they should or should not feel. Feelings are feelings. You feel what you feel. It is possible that feelings may be based on misunderstanding or misinformation, in which case, if you correct the understanding or the information, then there's a very good chance that will help with the feelings. Okay, that's good. But you still can't tell another human being how or what they should or should not feel. You feel what you feel, and that's for them, not for you. Number 5, you're going to like this one. Avoid arguments when one of both or both of you are hungry, tired, emotional, or heaven forbid, intoxicated. These things matter, right? You know, any of these make you more likely to start bringing something up. And you also know that every one of these makes it more likely that it's going to go wrong or go bad. So everybody should have the right and the ability to say, listen, this is not the time. I am absolutely exhausted. Can we talk about this tomorrow night after dinner? It is not a don't ever have a hard conversation that I don't want to card. It's not an indefinite nothing. In fact, I think whoever is not in a position to have the conversation should be responsible to identify a time to have the conversation in the next day or two. But there are always better or worse circumstances for really anything, right? So these are going to be worse and make things harder. Set yourself up for failure. Why don't you just have the same conversation under circumstances that are better and set yourself up for success? It's still even the same conversation. It's just much more likely to go much better. Isn't that nice? And then this last one is really specific kind of for married couples. Was that one there twice? I like to give. The nuclear option is off the table. Look, if you're dating, then I don't know, it might still be not really emotionally healthy to say, we need to this or that, or you need to this, or else, we're breaking up. Like, that's probably not someone who's ready to be in a serious relationship. But once you kiss and everybody cheers, you are all the way in. You are committed. Divorce does not exist. It is not an option in your mind. It is off the table. At my house, we never, ever even reference it as far as our relationship goes. I don't joke about it. You guys know I joke about a lot of things. I do not, will not, have not ever joked about this. It is off the table. It doesn't exist. There's no back door. You took it out. You sheetrocked over it. You put the fridge in front of it. Off the table, because here's what happens. Is as long as there's that option to go ahead and pull the cord and just bail, there are going to be some times where it's going to really seem like it just might be easier. But when you are committed and you are both committed, you know, okay, that now this is forever. And so here are your options, is just live with whatever it is for forever or work through it. All of a sudden work through it that didn't seem like that good of an option yesterday Sounds like a much better option, doesn't it? And if we can do well on 1 through 5, we will be committed to one another and to working through and making things better in the best way possible. And you're going to be able to deal with some stuff in a very, very constructive way. Isn't that good? So if you don't like any of these, I don't really know what to tell you, but I bet you would really, really like for whoever you're talking with or potentially disagreeing or arguing with, like whether it's a spouse or anybody, really anybody who you just interact with ever on any level. My goodness, if our elected officials would look into some of these, but that's a whole nother message. And I'll bet if you know that they're committed to honoring these, I'll bet you would too, wouldn't you? And here's what's going to happen is your communication is going to improve. Your trust is going to improve. Your problem solving is going to improve. Your relationship in your life is going to get better. I know it's frustrating if what you're trying to do is win the battle, but oh, you guys, it's so much better to just avoid the war. Don't hurt the wrong person, and you and your spouse are both the wrong person. Don't fire. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much that in our relationship, you're the one who went first, and you didn't wait for us to not curse at you or rebel against you or do anything that we would want to do to go our own way and serve ourselves, but that you came to us as we were sinners so that we could be forgiven and have a relationship with you who never fires. If you're here today and for whatever reason you've never committed to the God who came through Jesus Christ and gave his life for you, to satisfy justice for the wrongs that you did, the sin that you committed but could not possibly repay, to a holy and just and infinite God. Oh, today's your day. Just right where you sit, you can say out loud, you can say silently to God. If you're here, if you're watching online, whatever the case, say, God, I believe that Jesus Christ came and died and resurrected so that I could be forgiven and adopted as a child in your family. Please come into my life. Forgive me and adopt me. Make me into the person you created me to be. And give me the life that you have for me. And if it's a prayer like that for the first time, it's not the words of the prayer that saves you. It's your faith is in Jesus, and God's grace comes to you through that. And you are a brand new spiritual creature in Jesus Christ. Will you please let somebody know, if there's a friend who you came with, or you can go back to the point, that's just the corner in the lobby, let them know the decision you made. If you're online, send us an email, and we will be able to start pointing you towards some good next steps toward your new life. For those of us who we've been here and we've been following Jesus, but there's 1 or 2 or 6 of these where we know we've had some tendency, whether we even really thought about it or realized it or not, to do things that were hurtful and things that were counterproductive to our marriage and our relationship, or whatever situation you ever find yourself in conflict with another person. Will you commit between yourself and the Spirit of God to good, godly, loving rules of engagement, so that people don't get hurt? And honestly, whether or not another person even honors them is between them and God, but what you do is between you and God. And so, Father, we ask that through your Spirit, you would give each one here the courage and the strength and the follow-through to be the people who you have created us to be, to treat one another as you have treated us and not as we have been treated by others, in love and reverence for you and your glory. Amen.
Hey, Life Point. I'm